Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Marketing Roundtable. My name is Tatiana Knie-Smith, and I work in design.
I'm Rachel Rhodes, and I work in organic social media.
And I'm Brandon Jones. I work in paid media along with producing the podcast.
Woo! Yeah. And this episode is actually a part 2 on a social media related case study on Not Your Average Marketer, which is the second Instagram account that we launched. So part 1 is available on our YouTube channel, also Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find part 1. Part 1 covered more of the background and the kickoff phase of the project. And here, part 2, we are reviewing the results, some of the numbers, and key takeaways and learnings that we had along the way.
Yes. And Brandon is here because both Rachel and I were super involved in this project. We don't have a ton of perspective, as we usually do as hosts, kind of playing the outside role. So Brandon's here to help ask them those questions that might not occur to us and give a different perspective. Yeah.
Absolutely. Always an honor to be here, actually at the Roundtable.
Yeah.
But if you see me on the laptop at all, which you'll see a lot, it is doing some important work with this audio.
Yes.
So
snaps for Brandon. So to quickly recap part 1, which was again kickoff, beginning of the story, so to speak, we had noticed that on our account, the BrainDo account, we had accidentally kind of created 2 different niche audiences, and it got to a point where they were no longer mixing, they were not getting along, and when we posted something in one audience, we lost followers in the other, so we just decided to split. And so the BrainDo account niched back down into thought leadership, industry, culture, agency life, and we started a different account, Not Your Average Marketer, based around humor, skits, that kind of marketing work, joke content, memes, trends, etc.
Yes.
It's also a sandbox for learning and experimenting. So if you want to hear about the kickoff phase, because not only is this our brand, it's BrainDo, we're also treating ourselves like a client. So we went through a full kickoff phase with a creative brief,
documents,
personas, all of that. That's again in part 1. So we reviewed a lot of the content strategy, and now we're again going to be looking at the numbers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also where we left off kind of in the story, we just launched the account. We were still in early days. We talked about how we went viral with Kim Kardashian meme.
Yeah.
We were learning on the job with our new dashboard we've created that's custom. And we also had a modest boosting budget that we were working with. So yeah, as Rachel said, we're going to zoom out a little bit and talk more about the results and the learning process.
Yes.
So kicking off this conversation into the part 2, more of the how of Not Your Average Marketer, how were you exactly measuring performance and what were you looking at?
Yeah. So again, with BrainDo being the client, first we went to Cosgrove, our boss, the client, and figured out wants, needs, priorities, and we were really focused on growth. Again, brand new account, starting from the ground up. We wanted to grow as quickly as possible. So there's a ton of metrics you can look at with Instagram, but we were focused on 3 because we were focused on growth. So obviously followers, biggest indicator of growth, also profile visits, which convert into the followers, and then on the reels specifically, the plays, reviews. Those were the big 3 we were looking at.
Okay.
And later, we also added in collabs as another goal we were looking at completing.
Yeah.
All right, so we defined the metrics. Now, using those metrics, how exactly did you set the goal in order to meet with the client, understand what the needs were, and kind of make sure that you were set up for success for both parties?
Good question. So again, the client in this scenario is our boss, Brian Cosgrove. So connecting with him, kind of sussing out the wants, the needs, the priorities. And we divided how we were going to report on data into 2 6-week periods, because there was this sense of urgency, okay, once we saw that the niches were fractured and we had to restart something, we wanted to get it out the door as soon as possible. So we didn't necessarily wait for a clean quarter break. We just wanted to get started. So a quarter is typically 12 weeks, right? So it's 2 6-week periods, because again, a month just felt too short. We were testing so much, and it's so important to have a good sample size to test against and look at different variables and different settings. And it felt like 6 weeks was a really good period to kind of have that stop. So it was the first 12-week chunk, and we did have our bi-weekly, so every other week, we were having data reporting calls with the client with Cosgrove. So we were reviewing those past 2 weeks and kind of like a smaller snapshot. And then once we hit like that first 6-week milestone, we had like the big meeting to discuss like the goals we had set, where we landed, and what we were going to change moving forward.
Yeah. And I mean, depending on the client, they might have different goals. Obviously on social media, the big one usually is growth.
Yeah.
But, you know, that could vary some. There could be some more of a focus on just general reach, or maybe you're looking for a super engaged community, and those would have similar but still slightly different things you might want to look at then as like your key performance indicators, or where you set those numbers. We always like to set hard numbers as our goals, even if, you know, they're never going to be exact, most likely. But that gives you, you know, something to reach for, and there's a solid like over under, and then you can look back and say like, why didn't I meet this? Or like, how could we do something differently? Or was that unrealistic? What have I learned? Like, why was it not what I thought it would be? And having, that like solid number, something to strive for over like a more vague, like, well, we just want to see growth. It's like, okay, well, what does growth look like? Like, we need to define that. And that's something we always do.
Being an outside party here, I think it's pretty cool that you address this kind of issue with a lot of urgency, it sounds like. You know, seeing the rift and instantly coming to the client and saying, okay, this is what needs to be done. Yeah. It's a big haul, but we do need to start as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
With that being said, for those who have not checked out the first part of this yet, could you just kind of briefly go over the consequences if you were not to address this rift so quickly?
Right. So the month that it only ever came to my attention because I noticed we were in the red for followers for the first time ever. And that's as clear of an indicator as you could ever get that something needs to change. Yeah. Like, there's no clearer sign. So we would have probably continued to just stall out on growth and actually lose followers on our main account, because we did have people coming, because we were posting skits, humor content. It was a mix of thought leadership, like the podcast, and humor content. So we would have had people coming for one and not staying for the other. And something would have had to change eventually. Something would have had to break. And if it wasn't me going to the client first and being proactive, the client would have come to me. And you never want that. You never want the client to be the first one to notice something's amiss and be like, hey, what's going on? Like, you always want to make sure you're proactive and looking at the numbers. It's like a doctor. You need to diagnose when there's an issue.
Yeah. And like, followers is such like a thing to talk about. I think a lot of people, that's like the main thing they think of when they're like, is it an account successful? Like, what's their followership? Or if that's like one of the first indicators that something is wrong. A lot of times when you're speaking to a client, that's going to be the number that they like care about the most and want to see. But I want to like reiterate that our goals weren't just followers, because we wanted that more like holistic view. We wanted to look at more things that are happening. Like, profile visits is so important to look at, because that is a potential like indicator of like your conversions. If your content isn't matching up with your profile, like, is there a gap there? Obviously, you know, like reach with one of the goals was like 3 reels breaking 10K was one of the first goals, I think.
I think it's it was 100,000. 3 reels breaking 100,000.
Oh, it was 1 reel breaking 100,000, actually. But then later we split it to be 10 reels breaking 10,000, like splitting it up. Like, is it a more even success? Are we going viral once? Are we going for more like modest but even and sustainable growth? Like, just distributing those different, distributing your goals amongst those different things, create like a different story and how you're going to like execute your plan, versus just looking at like, we want followers now.
Yeah. And depending on the business, follower growth is not the biggest indicator of success. Like, when we boost posts, options are profile visits or like messaging, reaching out. If you're a super local business and there's only like 2,000 people in your town, you don't want like 1 million followers, because they're not going to come to your little business necessarily. Yeah. Like, it changes. It's different. Not everyone needs 1 million followers too.
Yeah, quality over quantity.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, so you choose the cadence of your goals, how long you would like to run this in order to collect a good amount of data. That brings me to reporting then. Is there a certain increment that you kind of looked at to report to be able to like bring to the client to show good growth, you know?
So we do have those biweekly meetings. So every other week, so twice a month, we meet with the client and review the past 2 weeks. But Tatiana and I are both in the account. We're getting notifications all day, every day, and we're constantly checking those and like messaging each other and being like, did you see this, did this? Look at this notification. Did you see, oh, Instagram changed the way they word this notification? Like,
Yeah.
we're constantly watching.
Yeah, and we are doing bi-weeklies right now. To be honest, I don't think we would be doing that with like any client, but part of our, because like social media, looking for larger trends, that could be a really reactive sort of period to be looking at. But this, client, this is part of that special situation where our client is also part of our team, and this is part of a like experimental learning process at the same time. So we're kind of tracking those learnings and ups and downs together and want to share in that versus like the client, we wouldn't necessarily.
We don't granular reporting with social media. You need, again, that bigger time period because you're not looking at like one instance of, oh, you sent this out into the ether. How did it do immediately? Things are beginning to age better on social media, especially on Instagram, which is the only platform Not Your Average Marketer is on. Posts are finally being they don't just have this like 24-hour lifespan that they had for so many years. Like we're finally starting to see older posts get more attention. Suddenly they're getting more impressions. They have this second little lifespan again. So that's really fantastic. But like, it's not just looking at the numbers. It's looking at the dashboard. Like, okay, what do we want to change about the dashboard? Updates here, updates in our internal processes, like documentation even. It's a lot. There's a lot that we go over. Because, like Tatiana said, it's client, but also the team.
Yeah.
Yeah. It almost sounds just like it's a baby, and you got to let it grow before it becomes an adult and kind of let it breathe by itself.
Needs a lot of attention.
Yes. Constant attention.
All right. So after the 6 weeks of gathering data and doing your thing, how did you measure up?
Right. So again, the goals for this first 6 weeks, we wanted 1,000 profile visits, 500 followers, and we wanted one reel to break 100,000 plays. As mentioned in part 1, we did go viral, so that was a huge help, obviously. It absolutely blasted these numbers out of the water. So we ended with almost 10,000 profile visits. It was 9,700, 903 followers, so almost double the goal. And again, we did, because it was still early days, so it was still easy enough for Tot and I to take screenshots of the notifications. Every new follower, it was very easy and very interesting to see a thread of like, oh, they liked this reel, it was the one that went viral, and then we got the follow notification. So it was a very clear line. Since then, we get so many notifications that we can't just like keep taking screenshots.
Right.
It's outpaced us as humans. But that was very cool to see in those early days. And again, we went viral. We had 1.8 million views on a video. So
it's incredible.
Yeah, blasting the 100,000 out of the water.
Yeah.
Tenfold plus.
Yeah, and like we also learned that the personas were accurate, which was good sign.
Yeah. The personas themselves were accurate. I was guessing that because we were targeting other people at work interested in workplace humor, that they'd be engaging after office hours. That's not necessarily true. They're engaging during office hours. That was the one thing that I was like, oh, this is actually a little different, which I think is funny.
They're just all social media people doing market research.
I guess.
Makes sense.
No one is slacking off on the job at all. That's not an option. We are not proponents of time theft.
We're not throwing any of our followers under the bus by being on Instagram at work. But thank you for being on Instagram at work and participating with us.
And then, I mean, I think you've already mentioned, but now I'm no longer sure if you already mentioned the fact that we had the 12-week goals were set at the beginning. Initially, they were set from day one. Right. We didn't do them like after, but we did end up changing them. So can you talk through that?
So at the end of the first 6 weeks, we wanted 500 followers. By the end of 12 weeks, we wanted 1,000 followers. Obviously, I just told you by the end of 6 weeks, we had over 900. So we were thinking we can get more than 1,000. So adjusting for virality, we wanted 3,000 followers at the end of those 12 weeks. We also originally wanted to have 10 reels break 100,000. And although we were adjusting for virality, we were also seeing that we only had the one post go viral. We had many other smaller posts that had a couple thousand plays, but they weren't going viral in the same way the other one had.
Yeah.
So we actually adjusted to say, okay, we want 10 reels to hit 10,000 plays instead of like shooting for the stars for like 10 million, because that, it wasn't as realistic. So the new goals were 3,000 followers, 10 reels hitting 10,000 plays. Now, obviously, the original goal being 1,000 followers, we hit that. We didn't reach the new goal adjusted for virality, which was the 3,000 followers. But we did hit the original goals. And then we did have a handful of posts in the 9,000s. Like, they didn't quite break the 10,000, but they were so close. They were, like, right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we adjusted for the virality, and I wouldn't always recommend doing that right away immediately. Like, I think giving things more time to really analyze trends and see how things age, and don't like immediately like readjust because one thing went viral.
Yeah, like changing it from 1,000 just like a little bit higher could have been like, oh, we had like a surge, let's just like adjust for that surge without like totally doubling the rate, or like assuming an increased rate of growth.
It also reminds me of back in 2022 when the first Elder Emo went viral on the BrainDo account. It like shot all the numbers out of the water, and it was actually so disruptive and so unusual that we set something up in the dashboards to exclude it from reporting, because it was just completely distorting all of the numbers. And, I think that's actually a really good thing to have on dashboards. Like, exclude the thing that went viral so you can see, like, the general health and a more, like, realistic, like, snapshot, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, excluding the outlier. So none of the data is necessarily skewed to kind of define the other trends. That, very important.
The dashboard was still being built, like at that time it was in progress, and we didn't have that necessarily like fully done when we were setting these goals, I don't think. So learning experience. I think I think it's easy, not like it's easy, something that we can kind of see at play with the way we kind of like adjusted and the shorter time period was like that sense of urgency. We were going fast at it and just like tackling it and problem solving, and shooting for the stars. Benefits, like pros and cons, everything has a give and a take. Like, we were really going for like speed and adaptability and flexibility, and now it's like, okay, we really do need to like take our time and pause sometimes and be like, no, we need to wait for this larger data set to like do this. We can't react. That was a good learning experience.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong, you brought up the Elder Emo post that went viral on the original account. Would you say that that's partially kind of an origin into starting to think about splitting up the two audiences? Did you see that like first viral instance as kind of like that outlier of like, okay, I'm starting to see something out of this?
Yes, because it was a totally different audience. It was people interacting with that post were part of a music-based subculture, and they were not interested in sticking around for marketing talk, which was probably 80% of our posts at that point in time. For the main BrainDo account, it was a lot of industry posts talking about our different disciplines. So that post got a ton of plays, a ton of engagement, but not a lot of converted followers at all, because they liked the post, they didn't like the account.
Thankfully, in this case, they were like aligned. The content it was a very general, relatable work meme, and the account was work humor. So we had a much better follower conversion.
Yeah, but we did build that into the strategy of Not Your Average Marketer, was that Tot and I were going to have these like character versions of ourselves, these heightened versions of ourselves. So I was going to occasionally, and I still do, we still plan for it every so often, like continue the Elder Emo series to kind of bring those people in. Because there is a little Venn diagram of elder emo kids that work in marketing. Hi, I'm talking to you. And then Tatiana is all about like reality TV. She loves that stuff. So bringing that into her character too.
But yeah, like that's a lot of people work. So it's like not that far a stretch, but like being interested in thought leadership is more of a stretch.
Yeah. I think it's important to highlight with this the complexities that come with virality, and not just, you know, obviously it's very, very complex to kind of break an algorithm to make it go viral, but more so the complexities that come with once something does go viral, how do you react and how do you shift?
The consequences of going viral.
Exactly.
Nobody talks about that. They're all like, I want to go viral.
Right. So the really big difference was when the Elder Emo went viral on the BrainDo account, it was a different niche. But when we went viral on Not Your Average Marketer, it was a marketing meme. It was just using the Kardashians as the setting for it. But people were sharing it to their stories. That was part of going viral. So I tried really hard to keep up with the notifications of whenever someone shared it to their story and DMing them like, hey, thank you so much for sharing. And more times than not, they would respond back. Like one person shared it to their story like, LOL, like this is me and at blah, 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 like getting ready for our meeting later today. And I was like, I DM'd them back real quick, like, good luck in your meeting. Thanks for sharing. And she's like, LOL, thank you. Like, just trying really hard. And you can't always be there in the moment for those things, but that's what social media is. You have to try your best as a human to like be in the moment, message people, don't use bots. But yeah.
Don't use bots.
I saw a story recently about a really, really big account that was obviously using a message bot, and they weren't paying attention to their account. So people following them were joking about the message bot in the comments of their posts, and they weren't flagging it for like weeks. So
brutal.
It's really important to have humans behind your account.
We need to find that article. Please send it to me. It sounds hilarious.
I'm so bad.
And that's why social media managers will always be irreplaceable.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for all you do. Like,
and
that
or
is
welcome.
Interns. This podcast is powered by BrainDo Interactive Consulting. We not only provide a diverse mix of digital services, but offer guidance, experience, and true partnership to bring your business to the next level.
This episode is all about an organic social media case study, but we also offer expertise in paid media, data analytics, web design and development, just to name a few, and we offer services to businesses on every level across various industries.
We have experts to help strategize and execute your digital marketing needs, no matter what step in the process you're at. We're there for you, from wireframes to paid campaigns.
BrainDo, experts in everything digital. Reach out today to learn more about how we can help your business grow.
Learn more about BrainDo and our marketing services on our website, www.brain.do.
All right, so these 6 weeks, what exact like months did you run this test during? Or when was the launch of Not Your Average Marketer?
Right. So the first 6 week period went from the very, very end of October through to the beginning of January.
Okay.
So we always knew we were going to hit the holidays, obviously. November was like our big month. Like we just shot to the moon in November. We went viral. We had great follower growth. It was amazing. And then in anticipation of the holidays, because it's well known in marketing, some things like really pick up and they're real heavy, and some things really slow down.
Exactly. Yep. Working in paid media, I always notice that those trends with the clients that we have, because as of now, I don't personally work on any e-commerce clients, which does really pick up in December, but otherwise, that's seasonality is absolutely a factor to consider during that time. So that's kind of,
So in the part one, we brought up as part of the kickoff phase doing a competitive analysis. So, and I mentioned it's important to check back in on those competitors and continue, even if you're not drafting like full reports, continue checking in on them. So in anticipation of the holidays, we planned for simple posts because we wanted to maintain our daily post cadence, but we were anticipating fewer people generally being on the platform, fewer people engaging, because they would be with family, et cetera, like doing other things, not constantly on social media.
Right. People might be less inclined to like want to be looking at work content for their entertainment if they're like waiting for that like holiday break.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're just cognizant of that definitely in our planning when we were heading into our second 6-week period.
Yeah.
But didn't necessarily expect it to affect our growth as much as it did.
Well, I think it was kind of this weird catch-22 because we planned lower production content, like a lot more like memes. Like I think we posted like a Michael Scott like office meme during the holidays. And what came first? Like, did growth slow down? And that's why the posts didn't do as well, because they didn't. We saw decreases across the board during those last few months. Oh my God, last few weeks of December. Was it less people on the platform, or was it just our posts weren't as engaging as they usually were? It's probably a combination of both.
Yeah.
So again, once we got back and I saw how things slowed down, I was like, what did our competitors do? Did they take breaks? Were they still posting consistently?
Yeah.
What were they posting? So I did a holiday competitive analysis.
Very cool.
Thank you. And what I found was one of our competitors took a break and posted one, and again, it's a comedy account, workplace comedy, mostly around LinkedIn, which I kind of really appreciate the LinkedIn comedy that's on social media lately. Yeah. But they took a break and just came back around the end of the year with a personal post, so not in character. And it didn't have nearly as much engagement as all the other posts, but the comment section clearly showed that this person had a community that was there, whether they were like in character or not. So that was cool to see. But they obviously would have anticipated having halted growth in December because they knew they were going to take a break. So it's a shock to no one that their data was probably tanked during December. Another competitor, they continued with the almost exact same content, but their posting cadence was less. So instead of daily posts like we were doing, it was more like once or twice a week. So in looking at their engagement and other data, it was proportionally smaller. So it very much had this direct correlation to like the more you post, the more you get, kind of, which is definitely the era Instagram was in at the time. It's shifted just a little bit, but it's still kind of the same. And then our other competitor, Corporate Natalie, shout out, was posting every day, same cadence, same high production value. So she didn't slow down for any reason at all whatsoever and actually pivoted to include holiday content, seasonal content into her regular work humor. And she went viral several times in December for both work content and her like seasonal, like laughing about family content. So we're armed with that research going into the next holiday season.
Yeah. And something else that happened during that time as well, which contributed and like compounded our slowed growth, which is part of all we're talking about with the learning and takeaways, is boosting was paused for the majority of that second time span. Speaking to boosting, which we're gonna like get into a little bit more now, just like with a lot of the rest of stuff we were talking about, we do have a pretty small data set that we're working with, and we've been experimenting with it in like the context of this account in particular. So a lot of these things that we say or recommendations we give are like limited to the knowledge that's just like worked for us.
Yeah, our scenario.
Yeah, it might not be the best for every single thing. Yeah, one of the big things that happened with the virality is that we definitely underestimated how much boosting was helping the account. We interpreted the data initially as most of the followers coming from the viral reel because it had so many plays and we just like couldn't tell where they were coming from. But after boosting was paused to work on some more like budget proposal stuff, we realized that it was having a much larger effect.
Yeah. Well, there was that little, when you would check follower growth in native Instagram Insights, it would say like, I don't remember the exact percentage. So let's say like 28% of followers came from boosting. And we were like, oh, so it's just we're getting most of these organic, but it was directly correlated to the viral post. So once we didn't have that viral post actively being viral anymore, it was like, oh my God, the number skyrocketed. And like the vast majority of followers turned out to be coming from ads. And I mentioned earlier, like sometimes they change the wording. Instagram's always doing little updates. Recently, at the time of recording, it now shows you in notifications when followers come from ads from boosting, which we didn't have at the time we're talking about now.
Yeah.
So now we do have that, and we can see that,
great.
the vast majority of new followers we can directly see come from different ads on different posts. I like that post. We can see that they're now in the profile liking other posts. It's a much clearer journey now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Because before they introduced that feature, you were pretty much going off of inference as far as, followers and boosting.
It's still a bit of an inference of like which particular reel it was from. Like if we have 2 ads running at once, it doesn't tell you like it was this ad that did it, but it was a ad. Confirmed.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that had a big effect. And just to like clarify, it was paused for like entire month of our 6-week period. So 2/3. Our boosting was.
Well, that
What did we
was
try to say?
that was in January. So I think.
Yeah, it was in the second 6-week period, which is why like part of our growth slow, we were like on the upward trend. We were like, we're going to maintain that upward trend, but then we took out the viral slowdown, and then we also took out the pause, the boosting budget. That went down again. We were hit by the seasonality, so that's put us into like that started the slow, and then we didn't get back out of it because we were just kind of like, didn't have that like extra boost behind it.
Yeah. I remember you were consulting with me and the paid team as well, kind of weighing your options, whether or not to boost, whether it made sense to boost, run a full campaign. And I did want to just bring up the importance of basically the difference between the methodologies and why boosting ultimately did make sense with this account as compared to a full campaign, where boosting is extremely limited with the features. It's extremely simplistic, and you have to look to lean on the simplicity of it as a strength for something of getting in people and getting traffic to your account and to your pages, which is exactly what you're aiming to do, as compared to running a full campaign. Gets a lot more rigorous. It sets you up to run a lot more analysis and gives you a lot of opportunities to optimize. While that is very important, that's not for every account, not for every client, and not for every budget. So I did want to just kind of point out that importance of choosing the right methodologies.
Yeah, because to your point about budget, the barrier to entry on a boost, best practices, a boost versus an ad campaign are very different, right?
Bingo,
Yeah, that was one of the first things you told us.
Yeah, and we kind of were learning about how it worked, and found out it like worked pretty differently in general. We definitely found some efficiencies as we were working through it.
Almost immediately. I think it was like our second boost. We already found something different that was working better.
Yeah, and we started, we covered our kind of initial audience discovery in part 1, where we went for too niche an audience because the Instagram way overestimates the reach potential of an audience, like by a lot, I will say. So that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to boost yourself. Like their estimations are very high for how many people are in an audience that will see it. And so we went too niche. We went back out a little bit. And however, for like a long time, we weren't doing the suggested audience because that is like generally a big no-no in paid world.
Depending on the client and the goal, you want to start off by defining a very a demographic and then kind of expanding from there. Where in a lot of those scenarios, having a suggested demographic will typically put out the campaign to maybe some leads that aren't nearly as qualified.
Yeah, so we were definitely testing within targeted audiences at first.
Yeah.
And then we were like, okay, like we've tried out these different audiences. Let's try a suggested audience because we haven't done it yet.
Well, we also wanted to wait. The suggested audience is based on current followers specifically. So we wanted to wait until we reached a certain threshold of followers just to give it enough data on who was following us.
But that was like a pretty major difference in efficiency and was definitely worth it. It cut our cost per profile view down to like either a third or a fourth of what it originally was. So we were looking at like 20 to 30 cents instead of like around 80 to $1, which is where we were before. So way more profile visits for less money. And I think because our content is so relatable to so many people, like it had a much better chance of working like that, working well. And we, as far as we can tell, there's definitely a correlation to the followers, growing, follower growth, and our ads that we were running.
Yes.
So although we can't like positively define it based off like Instagram being like, this gave you this many followers, there is a correlation there. That has gone up and down, as Rachel kind of said before, with our following, not our following, with our boosting. But that has like continued and reflected with like our finding efficiencies and increasing our profile visits as well. It's been proportionate. Yeah, that's some about audience. And then there are definitely some differences in like spend duration, like stuff that we found. I think we were cognizant of generally paid like the rules, like at least 3 days. It's like the smallest possible. I think we kind of started out usually around 3 days just because like that's a good time period that worked for us with like the amount of spend. Yeah, it was just like a nice solid like even 15 over per day for 3 days is like 45, and we're like mapping out our budget. We're like, that's nice.
Okay, so three days per boost. Okay.
It gave us the flexibility to boost more posts too.
Yeah. And we did try a one-day one. We found out that was definitely not the best move.
Well, that was for the Super Bowl related one.
Yeah.
So it kind of made sense to just do a one-day blast boost instead of like stretching it out over 3 days or a week, because it was every hour ticking by like slowly losing relevance.
Yeah.
But it's not, if it wasn't a very, very time sensitive post, I wouldn't recommend doing it again.
And it still like did fine, especially compared with this, the spend and efficiency compared to our other posts that we were running before the suggested audience thing. But it definitely wasn't as optimized as the other ones we were running recently. So it was a good test to find out and learn about like, relevance, and maybe, who knows, like if it had gone for 3 days, maybe it also wouldn't have performed great because it would have lost relevance as it went as well.
Right.
But we've definitely decided that like 3 days is kind of our sweet spot. We did some different time period lengths between like a week. I think we ran a 2-week one. Maybe not. Never mind. We tried like some different ones, some different lengths, but we would kind of try to divide them out afterwards, see if how the kind of spend to days, like if you kept that and increased it or like put it down to like compare more directly the numbers, and they kind of stayed steady. So we haven't seen any major differences between days that spread out amongst. It seems to be more related to the spend.
Right. It's very transparent that the more you spend, the more you get.
Yeah.
There's no like secret, only spend this amount and it'll do better than if you magically spend more. Like that doesn't exist. At least from what we've seen.
Like spending less over more days to be like try to get like more like quality people perhaps, because you're like, they're picking the cream of the crop to show it to. One might theorize that doesn't really seem to be the case. And you can see very clearly in the way they estimate reach as well. If you increase the days, you really don't see that much of an increase in the audience that it will reach. But if you increase the spend, it has a significant effect on how many people it estimates it'll reach. So that's what we found. And yeah, we've been sticking to it, and it's been a good sweet spot. Of course, for like a modest spend, we're trying to phase out of too much dependency on boosting and keep it for just like an overall growth boost to help like reach some people, or maybe spike some content that we're trying to attract followers for.
Right.
Yeah.
Most recently, we've decided to kind of dedicate it to what's already organically doing well. Before, it was like if we would see a post was doing really well organically, we would almost let it sit just to absorb observe how it does organically. Now it's like, no, if it's popular, let's just get it to as many people as possible. Like, we don't need to let something just sit and be like this perfect little organic situation. So yeah, everything's evolving all the time.
Right.
And for the most part, that does check out, as far as we are an account that is going for work-based humor and a very broad audience, you know?
Yeah.
If it were a scenario...
Do you work? We could be right for you.
Do you like funnies?
Do you send emails?
Yeah.
So to sum it all up, we had to niche down, right? So we left the BrainDo main account, thought leadership, industry, who we are as an agency, our culture, and we started Not Your Average Marketer to niche down into our work humor and like skit-based content. And we've seen a lot of success with it so far. We, went viral, actually not just once, but the same post went viral twice. It had a second wave where it got like an additional like 300,000 plays, which was cool to see because again, some older content is aging a little better on the platform.
Yeah.
So that was really great evidence of that. But also a couple other posts, they don't have almost 2 million views. They didn't reach the same ceiling, but they went viral in their own right as well.
Yeah, and one of them was one that had been out for a long time and then just all of a sudden caught steam.
Right, and that was actually on Facebook. It went viral on Facebook, which was, again, really interesting to see.
We've also collabed with other creators. You were there for this, but when we did a reel with Corporate Manny, that was so much fun.
That was great.
It really was.
Yeah, it was a really great time working with her. With Sarah, that was awesome.
It was awesome. It was really a lot of fun to get to meet her, and because a lot of her content too is like she does audio, so like to hear her voice for the first time, it was really cool. And we've also just been generally really engaged with the community, with our peers, with our competitors, like commenting on their posts, like comment back. We get a little bit of banter going on. That's been really cool as well.
Yeah.
It's great. It feels like very much a community, even though, as you mentioned, competitors, but really, like...
Yeah.
There's open for collaboration.
Right. I don't love the word competitor in this sense. It's not like we're two cookie brands on the street trying to get someone to buy a cookie. Like, we're all in this together to just make people laugh.
Yeah. And we've also learned how to plan and create, maintain, produce a content schedule that is, a lot higher volume than we previously had to do.
Right.
Producing not only daily posts, but preparing those daily posts over like holidays, people being sick, PTO, like it really does do a lot. And
pivoting for trends.
Yeah. So that was a great learning experience. And we're continuing to like learn and grow. This isn't it. So like something that we're starting to tackle now is integrating AI into our processes.
Yes, that's the next big learning experience for sure.
Yeah. And we're also looking for like, now that we have a longer data set of content and, data, we're looking for like more patterns in the dashboard to see if there's some commonalities between content that's performed better than others, maybe got more engagement than others, more reach, to try and produce more of that.
That's actually, we've cemented we found some similarities and we've cemented that into a series officially. So that's already underway. And continuing to really personalize our dashboards. Like we have this fun like bubble chart now of engagement minus likes. So like saves, shares, comments compared to reach and like the bubbles. And it's just, I think it's really fun to play around with the data in that way and see different ways to categorize different posts.
For sure.
Right.
And that, I think a client would be really interested in that too.
Yeah, the data visualization.
Yeah. We're not done growing. We still want to do more collaborations with other accounts. We're still finding new optimizations with boosting too. So there's plenty of avenues for us to continue experimenting with our little sandbox account and, taking these learnings and applying them to clients.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitely, from an outside party, been a very impressive and fun ride to watch.
Thank you.
If there's any company or brand out there that is looking to start a new Instagram account and build from the ground up, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, definitely. First and foremost, do your homework, look at your competitive, look at your peers, what are they doing in the space? don't copy them, but it's good to see what is working for them, and it's always good inspiration.
Yeah.
So do your competitive analysis, absolutely. Second is to be very realistic about your content output. We are on a daily schedule, but that's partially because we are cast and crew. If you have influencers, if you have UGC to wrangle, any of those things add to timeline. If you are a certain type of brand and you need to deal with legal, that would add to a timeline. We don't have any of that because, again, we're all of it all the time. So maybe daily output isn't right for you, but that's fine. It's just finding the right cadence of quality and quantity. And I would recommend to plan for a boosting budget from the get-go. Ours is pretty modest. It's not this absorbent amount of money that we're spending. If you take just like a small budget, we've really seen that it does really help get a brand new account to more eyes. It's very fruitful.
Yeah.
And finally, going viral is amazing. It does feel very good, but don't let that immediately change your projected numbers. Wait for more trends, wait for larger data sets to come out, and then pivot from there. Don't immediately just jump when things go viral.
And of course, on like the opposite side of that, if you don't go like viral, that's fine.
Right, yeah. Going viral is random. That's kind of the point.
Get just like some nice, consistent, sustainable growth, views
community.
over time, community.
Start to establish community.
Yeah, that's really a good place to be.
Yeah. And again, growth and followers aren't just like the only goal you can have as a brand or business.
Great.
If you want to explore other goals, you can reach out because obviously we do consulting and social media management. So hey, hit us up if you need social media help.
Hi.
Well, that feels like a fantastic wrap up. I want to thank our audience for watching these parts. If you have not checked out part 1 yet, please do check it out. It is a great way to establish the whole journey.
Yeah, you're probably missing a lot.
Yeah. I really recommend the kickoff material section because I think a lot goes into planning a social account that people that aren't in it maybe just aren't even aware of.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we will see you on the next episode of
The Roundtable.